Oh, I probably have scored away, but I was around, I suppose, 20 or 25 or so, I don't know. And he was maybe something like 40 or something like that.
I guess he's dead now then, huh?
I'm sure he is. But I don't have any notation just when he died or how, but I know approximately the time. He was down in New Orleans, and he decided to make a trip up to
Tampa.
Kentucky. He had relatives in Kentucky, and I probably somewhere on that trip that he probably died, because I didn't get any word from him since.
Say Wrigley Field is the Cubs and Kaminsky Park is the White Sox.
Yeah. Well, after 7 years, it got to be where Germany was kicking up their heels, and
This was around, what, 1940?
around there, yeah. And I signed up with a man that bought a new car in Detroit, and he brought it over there to Chicago and put an ad in the paper, and for a certain amount you could ride west. So I paid him for the fare to go to Salt Lake City.
How much did you pay him?
Oh, as I remember, it was something like $15, something like that.
15?
Hey, Ken.
So you got back to Salt Lake.
Yeah. Go back to Salt Lake, and
Did you start working for the trip then, or did you go out to...
no, I couldn't get near the trip then, but there were other smaller shops around that I had picked up a liner type operation around Chicago, and I worked these small shops around, and I was here in Salt Lake at the time of Pearl Harbor, remember that? But
What
I wasn't in the Army yet.
went through your mind when Pearl Harbor happened?
What?
What went through your mind when Pearl Harbor happened?
Same thing you can go through anybody's mind. All of a sudden we was at war. And I got a little job out of town, at Duchesne, as a matter of fact, Duchesne, Utah, and Duchesne Record. I worked there a while. That's the place where at the Duchesne Record, the proprietor was also a mortician.
Oh,
We had a combination mortuary and print shop.
And when you weren't printing up newspapers, you were retrieving dead bodies, huh?
Now, I didn't do any of that, but there's another young fellow that he worked at the paper, but he'd go pick these bodies up before the boss got next to him. Why, he'd have a lot of the work done on him. He knew what to do. But anyway, I worked at this Duchesne Record for a certain time, and of course I knew it wasn't going to last very long because the war was on. Finally, I drafted into the war, Army.
You got your notice, huh?
Yeah, sent to Salt Lake, and at the fort there by
Fort Douglas?
Fort Douglas, where I was hailed into the Army.
Were you anxious to go into the Army, or?
I wasn't anxious, but I knew it was inevitable.
Well, they inducted you into the Army at Fort Douglas, and what, did they give you physical there and all 9 yards?
Yeah, and I was shipped to Jefferson Barracks, Missouri, which is kind of a staging area for the Air Force.
Near Jefferson City.
Jefferson Barracks is what it's called.
Is that where you underwent boot camp, or?
Yeah, that's where we did our little marching around.
Dan knows all about that.
Here an hour before now.
Probably a good time to cut off before I get to the war.
I arrived at this Army air base called Jefferson Barracks, which is just a big base, the entrance to the Air Force. I was cut out to be a crew member of a bomber airplane.
What year was this?
Oh boy.
1942 or something like that?
Yes. Yeah, that was about right. So, since I was signed to Air Force, first step was Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which was a radio school for airplanes. So I was signed to go to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, to the radio school, and that'd be the first step. course,
Did you request that assignment, or was it just given to you?
well, I request to be a crew member on an airplane, so that was part of that.
But did you specifically request the radio operator part?
I think so.
Okay.
So we had to go to the school to learn a little bit about code. We had to send code.
Morse code?
Yeah,
Or were there other kinds of code?
just Morse code. And then besides that, you had a lot of theory about radio, and you had a class of that, and then you spent so much time learning to send and receive this Morse code at a very slow speed. It's always a very slow speed in the bombers, airplanes.
Was that because of mechanical problems, or it was just so that you could receive it?
Well, you had to be able to receive it at a slow speed. So that was part of the deal. You had to tune up your equipment in case you had to send anything. After all of that, I think I only sent one message from the airplane. It was legitimate, what you might say.
It was what?
I only sent one message. It was bona fide. The only message you had to send was when you dropped your bombs with a group, one plane send a message that had taken place.
Oh, you just sent the message bombs away or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was only once that I had to do that in an airplane.
Well, that doesn't mean you only drop bombs once, does it?
No. No, but they sent the message for the whole group. It wasn't just one plane.
Oh, I see. You sent it for the whole group.
Yeah. But anyway, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, that's where I almost froze to death. That's a very cold place in wintertime, and this winter when we were there. We didn't have any very good equipment to keep our heads warm when we were out. We were out ranging around. We only had a helmet liner. And that protected you a little bit from the breeze, but you got plenty cold. But anyway, I did well enough, I guess. And I got through the radio school, and I decided I was going to stick to it until I finished the course. I knew I was a little bit sick, and it turned out that I did have pneumonia, and I spent about more than a month in the hospital in order to get away from the pneumonia.
In Sioux Falls?
Yeah. So the next step from Sioux Falls was gunnery school in Las Vegas, Nevada. By the time we got there, it was summer times, so you didn't have the winter anymore. But you flew around in airplanes shooting at towed targets.
What's a towed target?
Well, it's target towed by an airplane,
Oh.
and you shot at the... Anyway. So when you got through there, the gunnery school, next step was a ship shop north to Washington, where they're making up crews for V-17s in this case. So that was what they did. They went to this Washington base. We were assigned to a crew.
Washington, did you say Washington, D.C. or?
Washington State.
I'm sorry.
And there was a base there, and they were making up crews.
Would that wouldn't have been like Fort Lewis, would it?
I don't know what Fort Lewis is like, but at any rate, they were putting you in crews. You became a part of a crew there. And it was all part of the training. That have you going as a crew to drop practice bombs, and etc. like that. There's practice for the bombardier. And we went to several different bases as a crew. When you got up there in the air, and the crew, of course, you'd be on oxygen, and you had to get used to that in the air to be on oxygen in the air. And of course we had a lot of different experiences. There was two different types of oxygen.
Do you remember any buddies that you had in training there? Does anyone come to mind?
Well, we tried to make friends of crew members. And like that. There was one experience we had a training in which another whole crew was the airplane had an explosion and the whole crew was killed. Our crew, we had to go with individual bodies, members, to their home base, their home. I went to the the radio man, he happened to be from Chicago. So I met his family and
Gave them the news?
what?
Gave them the news?
Yes, I met his family at his funeral. Finally, we got a new airplane and we went south to South America. In preparation for flying across the ocean from South America to Africa. Took about 11 hours to fly across the ocean. I landed in Africa.
Okay, so you went from the States to South America
Yeah,
and then over to Africa.
right. Overseas.
How long did your training last altogether?
Well, I can remember more than a year on the training, and we were flying all over. As a radio operator, I learned how to navigate a little bit and how to keep the plane, how to know where the plane was. With these radio beacons they had. We went around Africa. You went across a pond there to Italy and flew up Italy as far to where the base was, which was about halfway up Italy. First combat mission was from this base.
In Italy.
Yeah.
I thought Italy was part of the Axis powers controlled by Mussolini. How could you have a base in Italy?
Well, the Allies went up Italy with their army combat.
This was after the Allies had already taken over Italy, had...
Taken over part the lower part of Italy, yeah.
Okay.
Our base was, there was called Foggia, that's a town. Our base was out in the country, in kind of a farming section there. They had used the farming buildings for our base. It had steel runway, that is steel pieces together, you might say, for a runway. And then later on they got some equipment in there and eliminated the steel runway, but made it gravel runway.
Describe how you felt during your first mission. What it was like, and did you encounter much
Yes, we
flak? And
encountered a lot of flak, and the first mission was just to cross the Adriatic at what was some submarine bases there. And of course the Germans had flag guns there, at least a few. The first mission was all fouled up. I attended a jam session of the pilots, and that after the session they didn't think much of this colonel who was leading the flight, because he didn't follow instructions. He was supposed to go right straight across the target and keep a straight course. But he actually got hit by a little piece of flak, and I don't know, instead of going straight, he banked off him, like it caused a foul up of the whole group.
the whole group followed him?
Well, they had to. He was the leader, you have to follow him.
Yeah.
So they had to bank, and it was lucky they didn't collide. But they had a lot of things to say about the way he led that air group.
How many planes were in a group sent on a mission normally?
Well, your group was four echelons of see how many planes each. 6 planes, I believe, each. And so this group, we only had the one group, I believe. But all these missions after that, you're part of a whole big group. The Fifth Air Force, you might say, put all the planes up they could get, because there was safety in numbers. The more planes you had, the better off you were. And then B-17 could get about 30,000 feet with a load, and that's where you flew to get away as much of the flak as you could.
Did you have any other types of fighter planes that accompanied you?
On the long-ration jets, there was usually fighters that went along. But mostly it was just a big group of bombers. And of course, you all had your guns and turrets. These B-17s had a belly turret, which is run by usually the smallest member of the crew. And there was another turret up on top, which the engineer or one of the other officers. My gun was right above the radio hatch, and there was free lance. You just held it. But that didn't matter. I only fired 4 rounds altogether in all my bombing missions.
Did you get him?
No, I didn't get him.
How many missions did you fly altogether?
Well, the regulation was you flew what they called 50 missions, but some of the missions were double credit, so it wasn't an actual 50, but there was one mission we took where we landed up in Russia and the Ukraine. They had it set up that way. They sent American personnel in to help build the plane base, and we bombed on the way going up to this base, and dropped bombs on the way back. That's the way they had it set up. And I found out later on, after we'd used this base, the Germans hit it, that is, they attacked it with aircraft. Which was about the only base I ever heard of that was attacked by the Germans. They didn't have that many planes or
At least not during that period.
yeah. Well, they were running out of fuel all the time. That was the reason we didn't have so many fighter planes, except for one day, which it was a mission where the officer in charge, somehow they missed a recall signal, and he kept on going right on up to the signed target. It was Germany, and that was our group all by itself.
The rest of them have gone back?
Yeah, they've been recalled. But they had fighters that day, all right. they just about shot down the whole group. What they did do is they shot down all the back planes, that is the ones in the rear. Everyone's in those two groups in the rear was shot down. And so all the flying personnel of our squadron was shot down that day. We didn't have anybody in our barracks.
How many planes are we talking about that were shot down?
Well, you're talking about something like 14 planes. Be 6 of them in each of the groups. That was some day.
Where was your plane on that day?
I wasn't flying that day. As I say, the ones that flew were shut down.
Is that the one that you were on the list to go and then they took it off?
No.
You weren't scheduled to fly that day.
Well, what you're talking about is a trip they made to Cairo, just as recreation. And I was trying to get on the schedule on the plane that went, but I was, for some odd reason, I was kept off the orders. And it so happened that plane had an accident on it, came back, and those in the back part of the plane were killed on that occasion. And I wasn't on the schedule, so I wasn't there. So that was lucky.
On this other occasion you were talking about where the rear planes were shot down. You weren't scheduled to fly that day,
Yeah. Wasn't scheduled, so I didn't fly.
So did you lose a lot of buddies?
No. As I say, I lost everybody that flew. Yes, I lost several fellows I knew real well. Group had a distinctive red tail. The Germans had taken note of us, and they figured they were going to put down the red-tailed devils.
Were most of your missions flown over Germany, or did you have other targets?
Well, there's many of them over Germany. A lot of them were oil refineries. So there's a lot of oil refineries in the targets, and those are the targets where they had the most flak guns.
You got credit for? I mean, some of them were double credit, you say.
Yeah. Well, I actually volunteered to do more missions, but they didn't allow me to do that. That is all the way. I think I got 5 extra missions.
So all in all, it was, what, 50?
Well, 55 that I got credit for.
You were made sergeant, is that correct?
Well, you're automatically a tech sergeant if you're a radio man. And yeah, you're tech sergeant to be a radio man. I flew with that crew that had the radio man hit. They were jittery. They didn't want to go over any targets because they got hit going over a target.
Yeah. Was the plane you were in ever hit?
Well, they all hit. They usually numerous times with these flak pieces, you might say. But strangely enough, the plane had come back with all kinds of holes and nobody hit or hurt.
As long as it wasn't in a critical area, you were okay.
Yeah. Well, finally I finished the missions. I had a little space of time there where I roamed around Italy.
Yeah, well, you got those pictures that we used to display, those mosaics or whatever.
Oh yeah. Well, that was one of the things I collected.
So what other types of things did you do in your time off?
Well, like I say, I roamed around Italy. I went to Rome and Florence is where I got those
mosaics.
So,
did you ever get to Sicily?
Well, we went through Sicily to get up to Italy. So finally I completed my mission and they put me on a troop transport to bring me home.
How long were you there and based out of Italy, following your training?
Must have been the best part of the year.
So you got double credit for some missions, but you completed about 55, and that was in about a year's time.
Uh-huh. Homemade stoves that they use aviation gasoline. Burn aviation gasoline in the to keep warm. We didn't stick it out there in the tent without some heat.
So you were in kind of tent,
Yeah,
and you had a stove in the tent.
yeah. These homemade affairs.
What kind of citations were you personally given for your group?
Well, they're given what they call a presidential citation. The group was on account of that mission they flew, and half of them were shut down. So that was presidential citation was one thing. Got an air medal and a few things like that. We gone far enough?
Just about. Did you ever get a ride in a helicopter?
No, I wasn't around helicopters.
How about, did you pick up any Italian while you were over?
I tell you what.
Language.
No, that's one thing I'd have to say I don't learn too much about you. You can make the people understand what you by signs or whatever. You can make them understand enough that you didn't worry too much about the language.
So after you completed your missions, you say they put you on a transport and shipped you home. Where did you end up?
Well, we landed in. I was in New Jersey. Where we landed. I was put through another school. What do you call it? Cartography school or some name thing.
Where they taught you what?
Codes. And the machinery they use to encode messages and so forth.
And decipher messages?
Yeah.
So you were still in the military for a while after
Oh yeah.
they shipped you back.
Till the war was over.
So how long after you completed your missions and they sent you stateside were you in the military? Are we talking another year?
Well, not quite a year. I wound up out in Boise, Idaho, at a base there. I was there when we were discharged after the war.
So you were you actively then engaged in deciphering enemy codes?
No, but you're learning it.
Well, anything else you'd like to add about your military career?
Well, like I say, I volunteered for exhibitions, but they didn't schedule me for 5 of them actually altogether. I went on one where they loaded up B-17s with arms and ammunition. We flew it up and see, what am I trying to say? Well, anyway, there's a place there where they were actually fighting these Germans, and we flew up and landed up there with these arms and ammunition and unloaded them.
Would this have been in Russia or Germany?
No,
where you landed?
I'm thinking about Yugoslavia, but it wasn't Yugoslavia.
Hungary or let's see, what are some of the others? There's Austria, Bulgaria.
One of those countries up there. Anyway, we just landed at an old farmer's field. Only the ground was hardened enough, but they had to keep the planes moving right along, make sure they didn't sink and get stuck. So we unloaded these arms and ammunition and took off from this farmer's hard patch there. We could take off. I went up to this day room, our day room, and he said, "Well, you want to range around a little bit?" He said, "I've got a pad of 3-day passes here, and you can take these and you can keep yourself supplied with 3-day passes." He said, "You can make them out yourself if you want to know the difference." So he gave me this pad, and I got around a lot of Italy. I went to Rome and Florence and all those centers. Conditions were good that way because Italy was set up as a tourist center before the war, and that's what they like to do. Like to take the people on tour. And so I got to Rome and saw the Colosseum, and what had a mass with a pope if I'd have wanted. I copied myself, so I didn't touch the stuff. But at any rate, I could eat the donuts or whatever. But I think I came in the Fuji on a army truck. You just cut it right on the truck wherever it was going. And and he stopped at Fojo. Fojo wasn't too far from our base. And I remember very well the road that went from Fojo down to where the base was. It went past a hill there on which is an ancient castle. And a lot of these old castles were mostly dilapidated, but this wasn't too bad. It was mostly all in one piece. So, as I say, I walked from Forgy to where this castle was, and dang that they didn't have an MP station set up there. I never figured they'd have anything like that on this old farm road. But anyway, he wanted my pass. Well, I'd forgotten to make the dang thing out. So the pass I had there was a day late.
It was expired, huh?
Yeah. And the MP says, well, this is out of date. He says, and he says, you can't get past here. He says, I should run you in. Even an MP should realize that an air base would be different from regular Army bases. But he said, I should run you in, but you can't go past it. You wouldn't let me go down the road towards my base because I had an overdue pass. So he turned me back the other way. I had to go back the other way and fool around and dodge out in the field there to get past this MP station.
Did you get past?
So it took me quite a bit of the night to get around there, but I did. I wound up in Boise, Idaho, when the war ended and we were released.
Or at least from Boise.
Yeah. So, I had it set up so that I was going to be a Union printer. Before the war, I hadn't worked for the Union any, but
You hadn't?
hadn't.
Okay.
But after the war, the best place was the daily newspapers.
So
I had a good job there all the time when I'd been in Chicago before the war. I was working just haphazard small jobs in which I was learning the business, learning the linotype all the time. So I was learning the linotype, and when I was able to do that, under the Union, and so
So did you get your first, after you got back, did you get a job with the Newspaper Agency Corporation? Was that
Well,
your first job? Or?
newspaper agency wasn't in force at that time.
Deseret News or Tribune?
It was the Tribune and Telegram.
That's where you
The
got your
Desert
job?
News was entirely separate and in a different plant.
I see. So you got your first job when you got back with the Tribune?
With the Tribune, yeah, and Telegram,
As a linotype operator.
yeah.
You might explain for those that don't know what a linotype operator, what that is.
Well, linotype manufactures type for the taper. Everything is seen in the paper is printed from type, which is for the most part turned out on these linotype machines. And I won't explain the process too much, but that's what does it.
It's like an operator types in what goes in
You're operating keys,
like a typewriter.
and they not like a typewriter. It's a different keyboard, but what it does is assemble what we call mats, and the mats run through the machine to cast the lines of type. That's the best way I can explain it.
The lines of type are made out of lead, is that?
Yeah. Lines of type are cast from these mats, from impression of these mats which run through the machine.
I remember as a kid going up and visiting your work and you typing out our names on the line of type.
Yeah.
Getting us the lead.
Well, that line of type held forth for a good long while. As long as the line of type was in force, why the unions had pretty much their own sway in the matter, because on a line of type it was a separate keyboard, and you couldn't just hire anybody to run it. You had to learn to run it. So at that time I joined the church, LDS Church.
Was that like a year after you got back from the war? Or?
Yeah, shortly after I got back from the war. My dad, I guess, persuaded me to go to get baptized. He said he was convinced of the church, but he wasn't entirely active. And he said, well, you ought to get baptized. So I was living in Salt Lake and went and sought out the bishop at the ward I was living in. And he gave me a recommend to go get baptized down at the tabernacle font. So I went down there and was baptized by a young priest. And then I went back to the ward there and started reading scriptures and becoming a little more active.
Well, you already knew quite a bit about the church at that time. Is that correct? I mean, at the time you got baptized, you knew about Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon.
I'd heard quite a bit about it, you put it that way. But I didn't know about it until I started reading scriptures and seeing how they dovetail together and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I started home teaching, and guess who was on my first home teaching roll?
Must have been Mother. Dorothy Ferris.
Dorothy Ferris was on my first home teaching roll. And we started going together and finally decided we were going to get married. She had come over from Belfast, Northern Ireland, and something everybody doesn't know, they were extensively bombed during the war, and Dorothy was in it, and her parents were in it. Her father was killed, her mother was hurt, and later she died, so you could say both her parents died as a result of the war.
Yeah. What was your first date like with Mom? Do you remember what you did?
Well, I remember we went to, I suppose it was a show, and after the show, we went to a restaurant. Guess what the restaurant was?
No idea.
It was a Chinese restaurant with Chinese food. I think Dorothy hated it, but she didn't much appreciate it.
She didn't like Chinese, huh?
So it was me that liked the Chinese. But anyway, life went on, and we had various apartments around the area. There was 12th Ward
Well,
area.
wait a minute. You're getting ahead of yourself. See? We gotta find out how you proposed to her and that kind of stuff. How long it was from the time you first started dating her until you proposed marriage.
Was actually not too awful long.
Well, what does that mean? 6 months?
Yeah, how about that?
And how did you propose to her?
Well, I suppose we were going out together fairly regularly, and I don't believe I proposed on bended knee or anything like that. But
what were the circumstances? Were you in the car? Or were you at a show? Or
I think we were just in the apartment house there that she was living in. And
what did you just say?
Huh?
How did you lead up to it?
well, as I say, I was her home teacher, so I had to teach her that it was time to get married.
Oh, you gave her a lesson on marriage, huh?
Never a lesson on marriage, yeah.
right? You just said, do you want to get married? And she said yes.
So we had the wedding in our ward house. There was a little program. Remember, we had a dance, a waltz, as part of the program.
You and Mom?
Yeah,
All by yourselves?
all by ourselves. I doubt if we ever danced another waltz all the days.
Since then, huh?
Uh-huh. Well, we had these various apartments around that area there, and
Well, that area was what?
12th floor.
Which was approximately where?
Well, fairly close to downtown Salt Lake,
Can you give me
out there on the east side,
Can you give me an address?
around 12th East. And
South Temple?
just, yeah, South Temple down to 3rd South, something like that. So we decided to go for a home of our own, so we moved out in the Granger area.
Now, I don't mean to go back to your courtship days without cause, but you didn't say a lot about the dates that you had or anything like that. You said you went out to a show. What kind of other dates did you?
Just ordinary dates.
Well, what was ordinary for you?
Just associating with one another and keeping company.
Going out for ice cream?
Yeah,
Drives?
yeah, ice cream and rides.
Did you go out to the lagoon?
Can't remember ever being a lagoon at that time.
Great Salt Lake? Camas?
Yeah, we rode out to Woodland, where my dad was living with Chloe.
Did you go fishing?
No, I can't remember ever going fishing, at least with you, with Dorothy, because she didn't take to things like that, like fish or
Now hold it
hunting
a
or...
minute, because you guys told us that you went fishing on your honeymoon.
That's Guy's Cove.
Yeah, you guys told us you went fishing on your honeymoon. And Mom caught a couple of fish.
Oh,
Little silver fish. She keeps telling us about that.
yeah, well, I was thinking about fishing here in this area, but yeah, we did this fishing from a boat up in Idaho
This was on your honeymoon.
on our honeymoon, yeah.
That was Palisades, or what was that called?
Well, anyways, that northern Idaho lake. and we was fishing from the boat, and for bait you just use corn, hook it on, put it on the hook, and I could catch fish. Yeah, we caught a couple of fish on their honeymoon, yeah.
Wasn't that the place that Mom got a little bit scared when you were driving there and decided to get out and walk?
Yeah, well, it was up at the side of a fairly steep hill, and she didn't like places like that, so she walked.
How far did she walk?
Oh, just around the edge of the lake. There was an area up there where there's cabins, and we took one of the cabins, and I had a boat motor in the trunk of the car. We hired a boat, put the motor on, we was all set.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So how long were you on your vacation, or your honeymoon?
Well, I suppose it was a little over a week or something like that.
Was it in the Salt Lake Temple you got married then?
Yeah, Salt Lake Temple.
Okay. And tell us how you picked out the ring.
Well,
Just go over to Shoeback Jewelers and pick it out, or?
I guess that's the idea. And got a few diamonds with it. We were too flush at that time.
What kind of a car were you driving at that time?
Well, I had this Nash.
You had the old Nash, green Nash?
That was a new car then. I bought it new down in Richfield. The other car I had was wrecked, where it wasn't worth while to try to fix it up, so they sold me a Nash.
Mm-hmm. Great little car.
That's when I was on the trip with my dad. He was along with me when I bought the car, and yeah, it was good at that time. It was a real neat car.
What do you remember about, did you get a lot of people coming to your reception afterwards? Did you get a lot of gifts?
Well, we got a nice lot of gifts, and well, it was just a regular wedding, and they had this little program in which said we dance the waltz. And there's a lot of fun things.
Now, let's see. You lived in apartments, you say, around in the same ward where you got married,
Yeah.
and you had Althea as your first child, what, a year after you were married?
Uh-huh.
And Then I came along 2 years later.
Uh-huh.
And it was about that time that you decided to move out to West Valley, wasn't it? Shortly after that.
Yeah. About the time we bought the place out here.
You paid all of what, $10,000 for this house?
Well, if you want the exact price, it's $10,300.
$10,300. We paid more for our van than we paid for this.
Yeah.
There were, now, you had this house built, right? You got to choose the colors, things like that.
That's right, we were supposed to have the choice on things that went in it, but one day when we were supposed to be picking out things, we didn't get it all done. And we were tired, and we didn't get the linoleum picked. So the company just put in whatever linoleum we had, and it sure didn't meet our fancy. We had to change the linoleum.
Did you get them to change it, or you had to just put in?
Well, they paid part and we paid part, and linoleum suppliers paid parts.
So, do you remember the year that was you moved out here?
Well, we can look it up.
Must have been about 1955.
About that, yeah.
So, let's see. When Mom was pregnant, what did she have any particular problems with the pregnancies? Did she get sick?
Well, not especially, I don't think. And when the children were born, they were done cesarean, so she didn't have that childbirth to go through.
Do you think without the cesarean that you might have had more children, or you would have had about 3 anyway?
She's a small person, and that was the main reason for the cesarean. And well, they limited a little bit on the cesareans. They don't like to do more than 3.
You remember, well, when Althea was born, of course they didn't let fathers in for births at that time, right?
When Althea was born, what?
They didn't let the fathers in to see the birth.
No.
What do you remember about the children being born?
Just going in there and seeing the wife, and then bring the baby in.
Was it like you see in the movie where you pace up and down the floor in the hospital?
Well, it wasn't that way with us, I don't think. What
were some of your feelings when, like, Althea and I and Richard were born.
Feelings? Well, I was glad to have you. And, of course, a new father, you're not used to babies. Maybe a little scared to hold them like that. I guess you get over that.
Yeah.
So I guess we had a good enough family.
What did you find the hardest to adapt to as far as married life went?
Married life? Well, I didn't have much trouble with it.
You'd been
I had
single
to-
quite a while.
Yeah. All you have to do is do what you're told and do it in trouble.
Do what you're told, huh?
Yeah. Do what you're told to do.
When you first bought this house, I mean, it was a brand new neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Were you like the first on the street, or?
Well, I can remember being very wet because the water table wasn't that far into the ground. And they had to do a lot of drainage projects to get even a good drain as we have now, which we don't have a good one.
Yeah. So, this was a big corner lot that you'd bought. You had to put in quite a bit of grass in the front yard.
Yeah.
I seem to recall you saying you brought your brother Ed over to help you with the sprinkler system.
Yeah, well, Ed, of course, he's a plumber in Price. He's in fact, in charge of the waterworks in Price. But when we had built our house in Price, I had turned that over to him and his new brides without any payment. So he felt that he owed me something, so the sprinkler system, he figured, was part of the effort he made to pay me what he owed. So we put sprinkler system all over the lot, and we used what we wanted to of it and turned off the rest. So it was handy to have a sprinkler system there, especially with a big corner lot.
You say you had turned over the house in Price to him. You were the owner?
No, our mother and him and me were in together on the house. Now Dina had been in there, but she had moved away. She married a guy and moved away, and then took training and became a nurse and moved to Idaho.
Yeah. Okay. You got the big yard in.
Yeah.
planted some fruit trees, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I planted an apple tree and a peach tree.
They're pretty good size. Of course, the peach tree died a few times, didn't it?
Well, yeah, I petered out and we put in another one.
You worked there for how many years? 30?
Well, I worked there for all my working time. I was there until I retired when I was 65.
So, how many years was that? That was at least 30, wasn't it?
No, it was 75.
1975 is when you retired.
Yeah.
So that must have been started in.
For many years, yeah.
Must have been about 30, wasn't it?
About halfway through the deal, Newspaper Agency Corporation was formed to take care of the business between the Desert News and the Tribune. And
so they kind of consolidated those two.
you worked nights, you were working mainly on the Desert News, and the daytime was the Tribune.
And you worked both shifts, right?
Yeah, at various times.
When we were younger, you worked day shift, I think, right?
Well,
And then you switched over to night shifts for quite a few years. Is that right?
yeah.
Do you remember when that was? When you?
No, I don't remember particular. I liked working nights. I think better I did days.
You got a little more money doing that.
Yeah, a little more. There's a lot of overtime in all this union time. That's one reason it was a good job, is because a lot of overtime connected with it.
With both day and night shifts?
Yeah.
So you thought the union was pretty good for you?
The union was good for me, and they took care of, that is, various members of the union took care of the negotiations and so forth. I remember one period we worked a long period without a contractor. About 8 years we worked without a contract, but it didn't really make that much difference to us, because it wasn't the wages that was issue. It was jurisdiction was the issue. The newspaper wrote out the linotype and machines like that. They build up all new machines, and it was all photographic. And that's the way it was about when I retired. But now they don't. don't have anywhere near the numbers that they used to have to put on a newspaper.
They're probably all computerized now.
Yeah.
So there were a few times that you almost went on strike. Is that correct? Because of these types of issues?
Well, we avoided the strike, but if it insisted on a contract, it would have been a strike. But we got along without the contract, and we made wages wasn't the issue, so we were still making good union pay.
Mm-hmm. Were there any threats of layoff or anything like that?
No, not during the time that I was working there wasn't.
Now, besides running the linotype machine, it seemed like later on you did proofreading and other work like that. Is that?
Yeah. Well, it's all right. I like the linotype better than anything, but they say they finally were phased out.
Is that when you went to the proofing? It's when they were phased out?
Well, I went to the ad department for quite a while, making up ads.
Mm-hmm.
That's done entirely different now. They do it on those big well, you know, those display machines where you punch it and move it here and move it there and like that.
Okay. Then is the ad department where you did most of the proofing? Is that, or was that another department?
Another department. Ad department was where you made up the ads.
Alright, yeah. I remember the Christmas parties they used to have,
Yeah.
like at the Terrace. Do you remember how many employees they had? It seemed like those Christmas parties were pretty big.
Yeah, they were big. They had them in the biggest places you could get a hold of for a while. I
Wasn't
guess.
that the Terrace Ballroom?
Yeah. We done enough for tonight?
Oh, probably. Say that again.
Went to,
You had a heart attack, you said.
yeah. That's about the only emergency that I remembered. I went to what's now Pioneer Hospital, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you recall the year on that?
No, you could look it up.
Probably, I'm guessing 1969, 1970, around there.
Yeah.
Seems like I was driving at the time.
You could have been.
How long did that put you out of work for?
Well, a couple of weeks anyway. And I wasn't there as well when when I went back to work as I thought I was, I had to quit and go home at least once.
Because you felt weak, or?
Yeah.
I remember that really took it out of you. You did pretty well, nearly died on that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Came very close. I remember you looked awful thin when the first time I saw you in the intensive care.
Uh-huh.
What other things do you remember about that?
I remember walking around the hospital corridors and like that. I seemed to be perfectly well then when I was walking around.
They had you in intensive care for, what, 3-4 days?
A couple of days, I don't know.
Seemed like you were mowing the lawn at the time, on the weekend.
Yeah, that's when I
Happened.
had the heart attack, yeah.
Well, what's up?
Suggestion here, now right after I retired, I had an operation, and then as soon as the operation healed up, I went on a mission for the church. Now, I don't know whether you want to go into
Yeah, we want to get into that, but I want to take things in a little bit of, I want to go chronologically. We just talked about your work, and and before that we talked about you moving into this neighborhood. I want to kind of talk about a few things chronologically.
Yeah, that's fine.
When you moved here, you were, I think you said one of the first on the street, is that correct?
That's right.
What about the neighbors that moved in around you?
Well, there's several neighbors that are still there. Like the Garretts, across the street, the Almonds. Larry Almond runs a garage down the street, and he's been doing it just about ever since we moved out here. As far as that goes, we got along well with the Garretts. They were members of the church, and we were all butting into one another in the church callings, and so of course we were friendly with them.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't too many others that were stayed right to the street. A lot of them moved away. We were very friendly with the Wrights, and he was in the missionary work and like that, so we was acquainted with him through that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What about when you moved here? What about relatives that you saw quite often and were close to?
Well, that's something we didn't have. We didn't have relatives that lived around close to where we did. Our nearest relatives have been sister up in Idaho. My brother, of course, he lived down in Price, but he died after a while, so we didn't have him. Had his family.
Mm-hmm.
Family's still there.
Mom had some friends here, right? Uncle George and Aunt Lily and...
Yes, your mother certainly had friends. We both tried to make friends, but of course all of her relatives and such as that are very far away.
Yeah. Of course, there was like people like Agnes and Bud Brown and Mount Pleasant.
Yeah.
And the Gineses in Woodland.
Oh yeah. Well, they're sort of relatives-in-law, you might say. Weren't actual relatives, but my dad had married into, so he raised these two kids of Chloe Gines. He was the father for that family, and I think did a very fine job, even more so than he did of his own. But then we all knew him, but I didn't ever have any contact with him except at certain times.
It was as he got a little older and remarried Chloe Gines that that's when you got to know your dad.
Well, I was working over the Silver King mine at one time, so he had an old Star car, and he would come over there and pick me up when I got off shift. So we got acquainted that way.
How old was he at that time?
Well, he wasn't any young stripling, but he was well enough to be quite able to get around and so forth. A little later on...
what would you say, 60s? Or?
Yeah, around that, yeah. A little later on, one leg kind of gave away with him when a kind of a mine accident that he had in Alaska.
Okay. Was Potts Hollow, was that named after Grandpa?
Yeah, that was probably named after his dad. His dad. Potts has been around there in the same area for a while, so.
Thomas Potts then?
Yeah.
Let's see. I want to talk a little bit about the church positions that you've had and how you've liked them and your feelings about church jobs that you've had since you were married.
I didn't quite understand what you said.
Church jobs that you've had since you were married.
Oh, yeah.
What church jobs have you held, and which were your favorites?
Well, before we moved out of here, I was served in the state missionary business. And we did a little bit of that. I remember doing a little bit of that around here. But we never got any too good of contacts. We couldn't find too good of contacts. So I got out of that, and I was secretary of the 70 Quorum, and a few things like that. So you just work at those things and do the best you can. And our patriarch that we have lost.
Patriarch Anderson?
Yeah. He was among the 70s, and I remember that very well, working with him, but then he became the patriarch.
He worked as a Sunday school teacher or anything like that?
Well, yeah, I think I tried Sunday school teaching, but I was never good at giving a lesson out of a lesson book or like that, and I couldn't figure out any other way to do it. You wouldn't want to just get up there and read off what's in the book, but my teaching abilities, you might say, were a little bit limited. After I come back from my mission, I did a little more in the Sunday school business. You made Sunday school president. That way you had to teach
whether you wanted to or not. Huh?
Yeah.
When
Because
teachers
the
were
teachers
at...
didn't always show up.
Yeah. Which of your church positions did you enjoy the most?
Well, I've always gone around doing the so-called home teaching, and there's a question whether you should call it teaching or not, because well, I maintain that you could never force anything down anybody's throat in their own home. But you merely got there and talked about the church, or tried to think of something in the church you could talk to this family. So that's what you did.
Yeah. Okay. I want to move on to a little bit different subject. You're the father of 3 children, correct?
All right.
I'd like you to try to remember back.
It's slippery!
I grabbed the ball and headed for home plate. I was determined there was no way he'd get past me.
Slide! Vicky! Slide! Wow! John! Are you all right?
Oh, sure. I never felt better. They say this stuff is good for your complexion.
Vinky got a home run. Aren't you proud of him?
Oh, yes. I've got shivers up and down my spine.
Oh, good heavens! Oh, it's a torrential downpour.
That's bad news for us, Molly. When it rains like this, Gorgeous Gorge starts flooding.
Oh, but that's where Miss Nails took the campers. Oh, my, oh, this is horrible. John, what are you going to do?
Nurse Molly, somehow, by hook or by crook, we've got to get them. With little Binky's help, I managed to get the portable boat back into the carrying case. Oh, we gotta get the kids right away. They could be in serious trouble.
Oh, goodness, this thing is heavy. Oh,
no wonder. Binky, would you mind getting off, please?
sure, John.
That's a lot better now, you see? This kid must be eating a lot of donuts.
Oh, honestly, do you really expect me to believe that?
But it's true, I tell you. Kiss me and I promise you you'll turn into a princess.
You mean it? An honest-to-goodness princess with a crown and everything?
Not only that, but a castle, too, with servants and jewels and everything. The whole enchilada. Now, come on, pick her up.
Well, all right, but